I want to start off this video just by getting my thoughts out of the way on Nami in general. We're going to go in depth into deck building, but first of all, I think in general, rotation is a natural progression of this game, and it's good for all TCGs. It becomes near impossible to balance cards that are newly designed with older cards with old philosophies without just straight up power creeping the game. You need natural kind of blocks in systems, and it's also a better way for newer players to enter the game, because you then ultimately line up with a reprint problem where newer players might need access to older cards that may not be in print anymore. And so keeping a rotational format is better for those newer players. Now, over time, they may be more interested in an eternal format, a ERT standard format, where this is SRT standard regulation tournament kind of format, but the extended regulation tournament format is where all block systems are going to be legal, and something like that again might be more interesting to a more enfranchised player because they might be around for since the beginning, or they might have started in OP05 to OP08 and then they have a bunch of those cards and they're like, oh, now this is rotated out in a year or two from now and I want to play with those cards. And so over time that format and that's kind of line of play will become more interesting, and I think that's a good thing for this game. Overall, I think there's a lot of overreaction around the idea that leaders are going to be rotated out, because again, they will be still playable in this other kind of format, but you won't be able to play with them in a highly competitive sense, which I think is perfectly fine, because the leaders that are going to get left behind, the niche leaders, Sugar, Smoker, like stuff like that, those are fan favorite cards, but they aren't necessarily competitive at all. So why would you want to go to tournaments and play with them anyway at the highest level? So like nationals and worlds. Of course, your locals, if they're big enough, will probably be hosting tournaments of both caliber, maybe even on the same night. And I think support for that is going to be my number one concern here. Will there be enough support for local game stores to have prize support and numbers and recognition for running an equivalent amount or even more ERT tournaments versus SRT tournaments? I think the competitive scene and the really dedicated players will love SRT, but I think many like enfranchised players and just players in general that want to play with their older leaders will like the ERT format. I myself, because Nami is just officially rotated out a year from now from the SRT primary worlds format, I will not be playing SRT unless they reprint Nami. And that is going to go along with one of my other beliefs. I believe they will reprint Nami into this just because it's such a unique leader. My bets are that they will. I have no information to really support that. They haven't announced any information to support that either. They said they will be reprinting some cards, but I believe just because of how unique it is, they will. I'm just not sure. I'm not sure if they will reprint all the support for it. Like, for example, they may reprint Pilaf with it. I don't think they'll reprint Impel Down with it. So we'll be looking at other cards, maybe with draw 2 triggers, and the deck will be significantly diminished. And so there's things like that to think about. But largely in general, I think rotation is great. I think the ERT format can be successful if it has enough support for it. And I generally believe Nami will be reprinted into the current block system with kind of a little bit of support, maybe with some new support to bring it more in line with like the current metagame. But regardless, I think support will be there. My big fears are, will there be enough support for ERT, and whether or not there will be a separate ban list for the SRT format versus ERT, because that is also the next logical step. Well, coming from Magic the Gathering, being a Magic player for over 10 years and a content creator for that game for 3 to 4, for shout out to those of you that know me from my main channel, that is a game with multiple extended formats. The game's been going on for over 30 years, and I play multiple of those formats, and it makes sense because of legalities of different cards allowing for different power levels of different decks, that each format has its own ban list. So I'm hoping that once we hit rotation, once we hit a unified release across the world, that we can create a ban list that's separate for SRT versus ERT. Maybe we see the return of certain leaders, maybe we see the return of certain cards into those format, Kabaji getting unbanned in the ERT format. But I hope that also means that there will still be support for it and people are still watching it, that, you know, TOs and are going to run side events for it and everything. It still will get recognition and pricing, and I hope again there will be care for it. Obviously that format will be more expensive due to Bandai's lack of ability to provide ample kind of product for local game stores and just keep it out in supply, but that's a whole separate discussion from there. So I just wanted to get that out before I hop into the whole Nami discussion and kind of pepper in a little bit of that as well. So let's just hop into the client itself. The sim, I think, is the best way to approach this. So This is generally like a base level Nami list. A lot of you might be playing Boodles, might be playing Usopp, but I think we can all generally agree that 95% of this list is probably par for par what you are playing as the Nami player. Now, generally, if you're looking to play Nami in SRT, if we go off the basis that Nami is going to be reprinted, we don't know what else is going to be reprinted. We have to look at immediately what can and won't be playable in that. So let's go to OP01. Let's go to blue cards. So immediately, we know that Croc won't be playable. 3-cost Doflamingo not being there is kind of wild as well. Big end threats like Draco Mihawk, Overheat. Spada is the first one. That's huge. That's a 2 trigger that will not appear. Now, let's go to OP02. This is an Impel down set, so we will not be seeing Deathwink or the package in general with Buggy. Mr. 1 being a loss is kind of big. We may see the unban of Kabaji, which I hope is a thing if we get to the SRT format. But we will now see the loss of Impel Down as the next big thing. Although I know there are some kind of Impel Down Deathwing package lovers, we will not have access to those cards. And also what really sucks with this is we won't see love for Emporio. You know, shout out to all my Emporio players out there. I really do love this deck, just like memeing out Emporio Vankov with not this is Inazuma, but the Inazuma that gets printed later down the line. There's a lot of fun things that you can do with this deck list. So just really sucks that we won't be able to get to play with it. Now, OP03 is the big one. This is where Nami was printed. So assuming that Nami does come back, first of all, we don't get Kaya's. Next, we don't get Zephs. We don't get Nojiko. It's just like a little metal call. We don't get Boodles. No Bellmare. So Combat Nami, completely the package is all gone. Shout out to my Soga King truthers out there, the ones that are still playing this. Soft Nami effect with a little bit of a bounce. We don't get Rubber Band, which is a huge counter, as well as a great kind of 2-card trigger, draw 1, mill 1. We also don't get Gavel or Pilaf. So a lot of parts of the key parts about this deck are completely gone. So now OP03, that is that for there. And now OP04 is the last one that the current rotation of SRT does not take into account. So Apis, not a thing in this deck either. So we are not getting anything out of East Blue. We don't get Hanger either, which is a big blow, especially if Blackbeard is going to continue in the SRT format. And then also Red Rock, just not being able to get rid of some of our bigger threats. Notably, we do get still access to Gravity Blade, but just not getting access to Red Rock is really unfortunate. Now, if we go to OP05, this is where things start to get like really bleak. There's not many options kind of moving forward, and you have to kind of focus on specific packages. Notably, this is the Navy set. So if you went for with like, if you went with, where is that searcher? Oh my God, I'm thinking about the Navy searcher here. I think it's here. Oh no, it might be the next one. Tashigi searches Navy, actually. I'm looking for the 7 Warlords searcher that I was thinking of. Where is that? I just need the name of it. I can't even remember. Whatever. I'll find it eventually. Let's go back to OP05. So the Navy Searcher and Tashigi could be an option. You have stuff like Hina. You also have stuff like Houndblaze, which I don't know, like it's a main effect. It's not like if you wanted to like remove things, I guess it's got an interesting trigger, but it's like 3 cost or less. So I guess you could return your Margits and stuff, small things like that. If you needed to, maybe it's a waste of human life. Like this is a way to like board wipe. If you have a lot of aggro decks in the metagame, you could actually tool this in, board wipe everything, get a lot of cards out of their hand. That could be a fun one. Notably, this doesn't draw you up to 5. It just discards down to 5. So there's a big difference in that. It's not that great. If it drew you up to 5, this card would be definitely a lot better. But we're not really getting anything out of OP05 out of blue. Now, I think we also have to go into the starter decks as well, but we'll go over those in a second. So OP06, we have Pudding, which is actually a decent option. And then honestly, Zeph is honestly not a bad one. So if we see blockers being a huge thing in the meta, Zeph is actually a pretty solid one. Opponent activates blocker, top 4 cards disappearing. We still have access to White Snake. Gravity Blade becomes an inclusion as well. So there actually are like some cards that are still relatively decent in this deck. But I think really the package that we want to focus on is in OP07, where we still have access to the Amazon Lily package. And this is where cards like Margaret are probably going to still be really good. We might be playing stuff like Boa Hancock. This is a great way where, you know, up to one of your opponent's characters other than Monkey D. Luffy can attack. So it's like a 6 cost. Maybe you bottom deck like a Searcher, but it's a 6 cost 8K. You can use that to clear out board and like stop an attack. Maybe, and I mean, it's searchable, right? That's the big thing. If you're playing Gloriosa, you're playing Snake Dance as well. You could also play Perfume Femur as like a soft replacement for your Impel Down All-Stars. It's a thing that in the early days of 07, a lot of us were doing as like an extra version of it. It's one that's searchable. You could get rid of it with Apis, you could get rid of the Kaya, and it just became this like extra trigger you could take advantage of. And then your searchable 2K becomes something like the Boa Sandersonia. So there are options out of OP07. It just may not be the most ideal thing. Now OP08, this is like primarily a Whitebeard style set. You're not really getting much out of this, not gonna lie. If you go to OP09, the big thing we get is Nami, but then also out of this you do have some type of relevancy in the idea of like a cross guild build. But the problem is we do lose something like Spada. Spada is actually something that we could look up with the Baroque Works type in Mr. Galdino, because of the way it's worded. So you do lose that, but you could potentially still work with like some type of soft cross guilds build as like a meme. But then you also have access to Murder at the Steam Bat. So you don't have Gavel, but this is like a soft Gavel. Unfortunately, it's not really searchable. I don't know why the hell it's called Buggy Pirates. This could very easily have just been called Cross Guild, and Cross Guild Nami actually might have been insane. Unfortunately, it's just not worded that way. So Bandai decided to overtune blue, but not care about the rest of the color pie. Now, when it comes to OP10, we don't have many options either. They did a pretty good job of like leader locking a lot of this. A lot of it's just Usopp support, but you do have something like Cavendish available as like a soft attack. And then when it came to OP11, not much out of here either. Like you have something like this that like return one character, and then you have this as like a pretty decent like counter. If you have like low amount of cards in hand, maybe you'd be using something like Steam Bath or like repeated Kayas. You don't have impel down anymore to like forcibly lower your hand. This could just be like a one cost 9k counter. It's not bad, but other than that, there isn't much coming out of this. Now we don't have OP12 revealed. OP13, we know that we get the new Goldie Roger leader, but the SRT is going to be OP12, so OP9, 10, 11, 12, and then it's going to be 8, 7, 6, 5. Those are going to be the sets. So this is generally how blank Nami is going to be looking. So this is the starter deck. So if we look at ST01, ST01, nothing out of there. ST02, ST03, right? So if we just go ST in general, I guess that's how we can kind of look at this. Out of all the starter decks, there aren't many options for us either. To be fair, we could be playing something like Thrust Pad Cannon, return up to one character with a cost of 3 or less to its owner's hand. It's 3 or less. Not that great. The trigger is activated to main effects. Sables is kind of interesting as well, like as a removal spell. Maybe, I mean, to be fair, like, is this a Gravity Blade analog? Maybe. I would rather Red Rock get reprinted. And I actually have a feeling that Red Rock will. I think Blue does need access to something like that. I think like Bandai realizes that, but still having access to Beam is pretty important for us. And then in general, we still have access to something like Draco Mihawk. So if you needed something to attack that is a soft Kaya effect, you have that. I just feel like with Winter Kaya recently being like a prize, and like just how ubiquitous Kaya is across like different blue play archetypes, I feel like Kaya definitely will be coming back in terms of support. I feel like Nami definitely will as well, but we do have some other options, albeit not great, that makes a Nami deck that is significantly worse. But in a new metagame where the removal, the interaction might be a lot slower, not as efficient, cards like Draco Mihawk may actually end up being pretty good. And I mean, heck, it is it's a 2k counter in hand. So that's ultimately where the Nami deck starts to line up. It does look significantly worse based on like our current information. If we are under the assumption that Nami gets reprinted, I don't know if I would still be playing Nami in the SRT format. I would definitely try it. I would make a video probably once a week. I just don't know how much fun I would have based on the amount of support. I would hope Pilaf gets reprinted. I would hope Kaya gets reprinted at a base level. Base level Kaya, Pilaf. Honestly, if we could just get all of I mean OP03 reprinted, that'd be great. All the cards from there. Zeph in there as well. Zeph, Pilaf, Rubber Band, Gavel. Get those all back in there. I'm playing Nami, because that's just old classic Nami to me. I don't need all this like new age Snake Dance stuff. I could just play with like classic stuff. That's fine with me. I think still having Love Beam is like a big one, but in general, I will probably be focusing like, and this is a year down the line, I will be focusing my content probably on the ERT format where we have access to more of the content. But again, maybe my opinion on that changes as we look to further things down the line. Now, a big thing I wanted to point out is, as we round off this video, I didn't mention in the intro, but generally where I am looking to kind of take this next year of content is I really want to kind of push 4 Emperors as a format. I think I've mentioned it in a couple of videos. I'm recording a bunch of them at the same time, but probably in tomorrow's video and the day after that. but I want to make sure that with a lot of people just kind of disenfranchised with the game in terms of like rotation, a lot of casual players feel like they're missing out on their cards. I want to push the Commander multiplayer casual format that even in Magic the Gathering was originally a community-led effort and then became an official format. With Gundam TCG and even the League of Legends TCG coming out with their own multiplayer format out the gate, I think One Piece can only benefit from something like that. And I might even be making Gundam content down the line if it has a mill deck, and then also along with the fact that it has a multiplayer format. By the time you're watching this video, I will hopefully have set up like roles in the Nami Discord for looking for 4 Emperors gameplay, and I eventually want to translate that into a 4 Emperors Discord. And I'm hoping to get, like, once interest is drummed up, I want to get that going. So if you're interested in playing multiplayer Commander One Piece TCG, I highly recommend checking out the Joy Boys video on it. They have a great guide on that as well. I will also be looking to kind of push that and maybe collab with them a little bit, work on some creators. But if you want to play 4 Emperors with me, check out their video on it and their rules, make a deck, proxy it, get your webcam setup going. I would love to play with you and get some videos out there. Let's push this format. Let's get a new way to play the One Piece TCG, and let's just get really excited about a game where a lot of people are feeling a little bit frustrated by it. I think there's new ways that we can inject life into it, and I hope y'all would support me in that type of venture. Let me know in the comment section down below if you're interested in it, and join that Nami Discord in the description, where I will be announcing kind of roles and stuff for that. So shout out to that below. I appreciate everyone kind of joining me on this video. This is probably where Nami's gonna be. It's not looking too great, but I do have my kind of outright opinions about it. It's just, we need more information at the end of the day.